Good evening. Tonight's topic is so poor, only money is left. Well, when you look at this title, don't you feel that it's a bit strange? You thought that you have money, one should not be poor. And how come this person is so poor until he is only left with money? Well, in life, richness is not simply defined by the material possessions that you and I have. There are people who are very rich materially, but they are very poor in many other ways. Sometimes they are poor in their relationship with others, and other times they are poor spiritually. And tonight we are looking at one of such examples. Jesus once told a parable in Luke chapter 12. And let's read Luke chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Verse 18, then he said, "This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." Verse 20, but God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourselves? This is how it will be with whoever store up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God." In this parable, Jesus warned that an abundance of things could make a person a failure. It seems to be a paradox. How can a person with much possession, who is rich, and became a failure? Well, for this man, and according to Jesus' definition, richness, possession of many things does not equate with richness. A person can be very rich, but is still a failure. The second thing we want to look at is what response do we make as we look at the material blessings of life. Well, when God has blessed us abundantly, and we're more than enough for ourselves, then how do we respond to God's blessing for you and I? Well, first of all, let us look at what covetousness is, or what greed is. Well, coveting is a desire and an attitude, or greed is a desire and an attitude. In fact, a negative attitude, which will likely lead to an evil act. But let me say this, not all coveting, not all greed lead to an evil act. And in this parable, the rich man concerned did not commit any evil act. The younger brother who came to Jesus to ask Jesus to arbitrate did not do anything evil. But covetousness and greed may and very often leads to an evil act, but not necessarily. And the subtlety is here, because if it does not lead to when it does not lead to an evil act, are we conscious that this is not approved by God. That God does not even approve of such act. And coveting is wanting more and more and more. And there seems to be no end to this desire of wanting more. Well, it is not content with what it already has, no matter how much that might be. People just want more. When a person earns the first million, you ask the person, are you satisfied? But very likely the person will say, I am waiting for my tens of millions. And when that person has acquired the tens of millions, you ask him again, very likely he may say, I am waiting for my billions. So there seems to be no ending to acquiring more. And this is what Jesus warned us against. Well, Habakkuk puts it in a very subtle way, or in a very succinct way. He says, because he is as greedy as the grave, and like death is never satisfied. Well, greed is like a grave. It will swallow you up. Secondly, we will look at the main teaching in this parable. Now, every parable that Jesus taught has only one main teaching. And in fact, to interpret the parable accurately, we cannot attach too many inferences, symbolism, allegory to the parable. It's not the rich man represent this, and the grain represent this, the barn represent that, and the wine represent this or that. No, there's only one main teaching in each parable. Now, those who interpret the parable in this way, they miss the point. In this parable, Jesus was teaching one main point. And that main point is, do not covet. Watch out for covetousness. Watch out for greediness. So watch out for greed. So first of all, we see the man, the younger brother, came to ask Jesus to arbitrate for him. Well, someone in the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Jesus replied, Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? You see, in this instant, the younger brother came to Jesus to ask Jesus to tell his elder brother to split the inheritance. And he wasn't happy with the existing arrangement. Now, according to the Jewish law, the elder brother would have two portions, and the younger brother would have received one portion. And therefore, the property actually would have been divided into three portions, and the elder brother would receive two, and the younger brother one. Now, this younger brother, he wasn't happy with this arrangement. The Bible did not say too much about whether he was this or he was that. I like to believe that he was also a successful person. That's why Jesus tells this parable. But he wasn't happy with what he had already have. He wanted more. He wanted Jesus to split the inheritance. About talking about inheritance, let me also sidetrack a bit and say this. It is not always wise to divide inheritance among brothers. I'm meaning to say the controlling shares. Let me give you one example. We Chinese has a saying, riches do not pass to 3 generations. That means it will not survive 3 generations. You know why? Well, first the man, he made his money, he built his company, he strengthened it, he prospered it, and then he has 2 sons, let's say. And then when he died, he passed his controlling shares and his company to his 2 sons. And if according to this culture, Jewish culture, the share will be divided into 3 parts. Elder sons 2 parts, the younger son 1 part. But if these 2 brothers are united, they would not have split the company. The company will still be run with 3 shares. 2 to the elder brother, 1 to the younger brother. And then the 2 brothers married and each have each has 2 children. And so now the third generation have 4 children. And now the shares will be diluted in each hand. Now what happened if each of the grandson decided to sell off his or her shares? Well, an outsider will just come and buy over the company and take control over the company. And in the end, their business and their wealth will be swallowed up by another shark. So you see, dividing properties may not be the best arrangement. Now when I say divide, I mean to say that the management, the controlling management, it's not really your part of the share. It will always be yours, even if it's still as a whole company intact. Or you decide to have it on your own so that you can sell it, you can trade it, you can take the money and do something else. Now this we have seen actually a lot in our society. A lot of previously they were successful companies, rich men, and today, after the third generation, they are not as rich. They are not as successful. Why? Because they got this inheritance, splitting of the inheritance problem. So this younger brother would have thought that his troubles will be over if he received his inheritance. That means to say that he has the controlling ability. He has the controlling power. So he asked Jesus to speak to his elder brothers to give him that controlling 1/3 of the share that he can control now. But Jesus refused. Jesus did not state exactly the reason, except to say that he wanted more. That's why Jesus gave this parable. Now the second person that we see, and really the main character in the parable, is that rich farmer. Now the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. This is what the main storyline of this parable. Well, this man, he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. I like that actually. Now the farmer was already rich. Let me tell you this. This farmer was already rich. And then on a certain year, he has a bountiful harvest. He became richer. Now see, this is where the problem is. Jesus is not against riches. Jesus is not against success. The problem with this farmer was he wanted more. See, God has blessed him with more. But what did he do with the abundant blessings that God has showered upon him? Now when the bumper harvest came, his crop increased, his wealth increased. And so he consulted neither God nor man. He did not think about, wow, since God has blessed me with this bountiful blessing, how can I also bless the kingdom of God, the works of the Lord, the people of God? Or did he seek counsel from man who can advise him how he can use his riches wisely? He counseled neither. His solution was to talk to himself. He has a conversation with himself. He said, what shall I do? Well, this is the question that each of us has to face. We have to face when we possess more than we need to sustain our life. Now I hope that, and I wish, and maybe I also pray that we will not be poor. We will have more than enough for sustenance. And that we are also blessed that we have the ability to help others. That should be our prayer. Do not think that to be holy you have to be poor. No, there's no virtue in poverty. It does not glorify God. It does not help you as a person. And do not associate that rich men are all wicked and they are sinners. No. The poor can be sinners because they steal, because they're so poor. So don't equate poverty with holiness and riches with sin. No. There are poor who are holy and there are poor who are sinners. I mean, they sin. There are rich who are holy, and there are also rich who are sinners, who sin. So don't equate either. Now, when this bumper harvest came upon this rich farmer, there were many things he could have done with his surplus. Now he got many more options. But his decision was actually egoistically selfish, as his conversation with himself. He thinks only for himself. He plans to fill his new barns rather than to help some poor people. Now, anything wrong to tear down his old barns and build new barns? I think from the management point of view, from a businessman point of view, nothing wrong about that. In fact, you can consider him wise. But really, Jesus is not targeting as he tearing down the barn and building new barns. It was more than this tearing down and building new barns. It was more his attitude than his plan to build new barns. So do not confuse about good planning with being unspiritual. Good planning is not unspiritual. In fact, if you are spiritual, you should have good planning. But you look at his conversation with himself. In this parable, there are a lot of personal pronouns. The personal pronoun is I, my crops, my barns, my grains, my soul. Someone asked a young boy in the school, a school teacher asked a young boy and say, young man, can you describe to me what kind of pronoun is I and mine? This young intelligent boy say, aggressive pronouns. Yes, aggressive pronouns. Mine. Everything is mine, mine. My crops, my barn, my grain, my soul. So you see, he has no other people in his life. It's self-consuming. So this rich man has reached a place that he is satisfied that his possession will be sufficient to see him through years down the road. He has security. Is it good? It is good. In fact, all of us should seek to have this kind of position. There's no glory to go around begging. There's no glory going around borrowing. We should have well-planned future, a well-planned retirement, a secured retirement. But what was wrong with him? Wasn't he planning all this? Well, we will come to it. You see, he has achieved his life goal. Well, many of us have planned that so one day when we have reached a certain age, we can slow down a bit. And then when no one wants to hire us, we don't have to worry. Then we can, live on whatever we have saved, whatever the government has helped us to save. So don't use all your CPF at one go. Plan for our future. So this rich man, in his conversation, he decided that one day he will retire. One day he will retire. And then he will enjoy, eat, drink, and be merry. Now, to eat, drink, and be merry, is there anything wrong? No, I will just say categorically. Eating, drinking, and make merry is not also sin, if you know the limits. God did not ask us to cry and woe and go hungry and then glorify God. No. But how you eat, how you drink, and how you make merry is also important. If in life everything is eat, drink, and be merry, then something is not right. But he did not realize that, as what the parable was told in the parable, that very night, he was dead. He died. But you know one thing he did not plan? He planned for his future in the physical way, but he did not plan his future in the spiritual way. He thought that with all the abundance that he have, he will have many more years to enjoy. He said that years ahead I will have enjoy eat, drink, and be merry. But he could not control the years ahead. And he did not see God. He did not see the hands of God upon his life. He only see that as if life is in his own hand. He controls it all. You see, this is his problem. And really this is the issue that Jesus wanted to raise and emphasize in this parable. See, abundant possessions do not guarantee many years ahead. And the opposite is true. Just as less possession would not have meant less years. Don't get it wrong. Don't get confused. It's good to have saving. But a lot of possession does not mean that you will have many years. We don't control the years we live. It's in God's hand. You see, when you imagine, if you are his neighbors, and then you look at this man, wow, successful, good planning. When he has a harvest, a bumper crop, he built new barns, he tear down the old one, smaller one, build bigger one, he store them, he invests wisely. Then you will call him what? You will call him intelligent. You would have called him wise. We would have called him wise and intelligent, right? But that is man's evaluation. In the eyes of God, God calls him a fool. God calls him a fool. You know, in the Bible, in the Hebrew language, a fool is defined as what? Do you know? A no-gooder. He's a fool. So in the eyes of man, he might be successful, but in the eyes of God, he was just a fool. Because he was not rich towards God. He is only rich in the eyes of men. He's only rich in the eyes of man. But he wasn't rich towards God. So what? We come to point number 3. What does it mean? Not rich towards God. The rich farmer responded to the blessing in the wrong way. And he died leaving everything behind. Someone said that whatever you have, that you own, if you spend it, that is yours. If you leave behind, that's called inheritance. That's not yours because you cannot bring along. Well, the old sage Job says what? Naked I come, and naked shall I return. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Yes, when we came to this earth, we brought nothing. One day when we leave this earth, we can't bring anything. So we have to make good use. Make wisely use what the Lord has placed in our hands, especially the surpluses, the more than enough that we have. See, this rich farmer, he values material blessings and he neglected the spiritual aspect. So his world was all material. But he neglected the spiritual. Now, as I said earlier, material blessing is not all evil. We cannot associate that rich means evil, rich means sin. No. God wants us rich. In the Bible, we have many characters. Abraham was rich, Solomon was rich. Many people were very rich in the Bible. God did not want them to be poor. In fact, God did not want you and I to be poor. God wants us to be rich in every sense. But the richness must be wholesome. Not one-sided. Not only material blessings. This rich fool, he was rich. But he's only rich in material things. In the spiritual, he neglects. He neglects the spiritual. Whether he has God, he has a spiritual life, well, very obvious the answer is no. The answer is no. See, he wants enjoyment, but he forgot the suffering of others. And really, is enjoyment wrong? See, God never intended for you and I to suffer, by the way. So do not think that suffering means you are holy. Enjoyment means you are unholy. No, there are some wrong teachings. There are some people who always think that if you live well, if you enjoy, means you are in sin. No. God wants us also to live well within our means and do not stumble others. If you live in such a way that you stumble others, then you think about it. Even you can afford it, but you stumble others, you think about it. You're very careful. But God really did not want any one of us to suffer, because suffer brings Him no glory. If all the Christians are poor and suffering, who wants to become Christian? No. Our testimony, our life testimony, our whole life, whether it's our work, our career, our possession, our faith, our behavior, these are all our testimony, and you point towards God. So if we live a balanced, fruitful life, it glorifies God. So God did not want us to suffer in order to bring glory to Him. No, it's not like that. But this man, he wanted enjoyment, but he neglected others. He forgot about the suffering of others. He forgets his life is in the hand of God. He thought that everything is in His control. And so we have to be careful. When we are successful, we always think that we are in control. I always say, when you are successful, when I am successful, the more successful I am, the more careful I need to be. The more dangerous I'm living at a level that is, you know why dangerous? Because you and I will become targets for the devil. See, the devil wants to bring successful people down. There's no glory for the devil to bring down someone who is a failure. He's already a failure. What is there to bring him or her down? But for a successful person, bringing down a successful person will stumble many people. Therefore, we do not allow ourselves to become targets for the devil. So we all have to be very mindful and remind ourselves we have to be humble. So God really is not against enjoyment. But in the midst of enjoyment, do we forget others? He forgot his life is in the hand of God, really. Now he was rich materially, but poor spiritually. This was a rich fool. That's why I entitled my message called "So Poor That Only Money Is Left." You see, for this rich fool, he is so rich, but yet spiritually he is so poor. He is so poor in many aspects. And what is left behind was what? Money. So he is so poor that only money is left. It's a paradox. Money is not everything. But we do need money to survive, by the way. So do not be so spiritual and think that money is evil. Money is not evil. Money is neutral. Money is a means of exchange. We need money to survive. We need money to live a life. We need money to operate. But don't be slaves to money. Don't let money control us. We should be the one controlling the material. We should be the one controlling the money. And this rich man, he was not sensitive to others' needs and others' hurt. See, around us, are there people hurting? Are there people in need, especially in this COVID situation? This pandemic is not over yet. If we return to normal, it's called a new normal. Companies are closing down. People lose their jobs. And there are a lot of needs. There are a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. In fact, I think silently there are a lot of cries. People are crying. Maybe you didn't hear the cries, but they are. Are we sensitive to those needs? This rich man failed to minister to others in the name of God. He only thinks about himself. Because when God blessed him with these abundant crops, he was thinking about storing it, use it for his own enjoyment, and that's it, full stop. That was his problem. His problem is not about riches. His problem is just use it for himself. Lastly, let me mention this. Since God has given us abundance and we have surpluses to bless others, and then when we donate, when we give, then we come to the fourth point, and I call it sow unto good ground. What it means by sowing unto good ground? Well, if you plant a seed, you make sure that your seed is planted unto fertile ground, that your seed will grow. You will not stifle your seed. So it's what it means by sow unto good ground. Now the issue with the rich farmer is self-consumption. Everything was for himself. Me, not on others. He neglects to share and help the less fortunate. Now today, you and I, we have a bit of ability perhaps, and we have some surplus. God has blessed you, God has blessed me. Then what do we do? Now, however, when we give, when we donate, one must be prudent and wise when giving away your money. Because really outside, whether it's a welfare organization, whether it's a church, whether it's a ministry, whether it's an individual or a group of people, they are in need. They always have needs, by the way. And nothing wrong to help them, yes. But you make sure that you are sowing unto good grounds. Make sure your giving, your donation is donated to groups, to people with real needs. Sad to say, and it gives me no joy to say this, that there are also organizations that are not worthy to be supported. Years ago, there was this welfare organization. They have millions, in fact, tens of millions in their reserve, in their saving. Or if I'm not wrong, it's hundreds of millions. And then the top man's office is opulent, extravagant. They all travel by first class, etc. And one day they get into trouble. They got into a legal issue, and it became public news. And then you start to wonder, if you give to such organization, for the very $1 that you donated, you will wonder whether were 10 cents used for that objective of that organization, or only 2 cents out of your $1 were used. So see, how the money will used is very important. So when you give, when you sow, make sure you sow unto good ground. You don't sow to support the lifestyle of the top leaders. So be wise. We should help the poor, yes. We should donate to welfare, yes, please do. But be very wise, so that you scrutinize very carefully before you part with your money. Don't be like the rich fool, not even willing to part 1 cent. But when you are willing to part, also be wise. Because for the rich man, it was greed. But if we part our money unwisely, we are also not that wise. In conclusion, let me say this. As we plan for the future, we must also have room for generosity. Is it not true? So we all must plan for our future, especially in our context, in the land we live. We know that it's very challenging. Cost of living is not cheap. Our money don't grow big. Our money shrunk, actually, the value, because of inflation. So we have to manage our funds carefully, wisely. So as we plan for the future, we must make room for generosity. It means that we do not just be self-consuming, only think about ourselves, but forget about others. Well, if we focus just on our own security net, our safety nets, and we don't see the needs around us, then we are nothing. We are just like the rich fool. We are no better off than him. But as I said earlier on, when you plan to give, choose wise, good objective. Good targets, real needs that you support. So you don't just give blindly. Just because they ask you to give, you give. No. How they use your money. If all the money you give are stored in the bank, millions in the bank, you want to give? Do they help the poor? In the Christian context, do they do mission? Do they support other Christian organizations? Other Christian work, ministry? Do they help the poor? There are many poor around. Do they do social projects? There are educational projects. There are many other social projects. Or hold the money in the bank. Tens of millions. You think carefully. So be wise even when you contribute. So in closing, I will say this. Don't let greed consume us and wanting to have more and more. But when we give, be wise also. God bless you. Good night.